Hello, and welcome to the Whimsical Weddings collab. I'd like to thank my collab partners for joining me. Be sure you check out their projects on YouTube and Instagram. So, who are we making today? His name is Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. Conjure it at your own risk. He is the Wizard of Chicago, a private detective and a defender of the city. He is a Titan slayer, a father, and a cherished friend. But in this video, he starts out as a G3 Heath Burns doll. In the books, Harry is described as 6 foot 9 inches tall. He is pale, lean, and has dark hair and eyes. So that means that Heath is about to go through some stuff. I have to chop him up to make him substantially taller than he started out. So I cut his stomach and thighs. And then I have to cut his arms to keep him proportional. I stuff his stomach cavity with aluminum foil, and then I glue his stomach and hips back together. Then I take epoxy sculpt, and I carefully smooth over all of the edges on his stomach, on his thighs, and on his legs. The funny thing is, this is the first time I've used a G3 Heath Burns doll, and he really did not want to come apart. I had to really fight to get him to break apart at all, on his legs, on his stomach. It was kind of a nightmare. And originally, I just wanted to take his knees off at the joint so that I could just extend his thighs and then put the knee back into a joint. But there is no way. I tried, and I could not get his knees to pop out of the joint, so I had to resort to cutting his legs up. So after all of that struggle, I was kind of tired of dealing with Harry/Heath. He's going to be Harry from now on. So I moved on to my lady of this video, and she is Karen Murphy. For the doll, I used a Twyla body with a Monica Decay head. I use the Monica head because she has like a little smiling smirk, which is perfect for Karen. So I sanded the body and I put the new head on. Then I tried to use a color wheel to figure out how to take that purple and make it more of a peach skin tone. And to be honest, I get my butt kicked by the color wheel. I have no idea how it works. From what I understood, I should have added yellow. So I did that, but then she just ended up yellow. So that wasn't what I wanted, obviously. So after a lot of time and effort of using soft pastels to try to counterbalance the purple of her skin, she basically just ended up this very strange yellow-purple color. So I got frustrated and I went back to working on Harry. And right here you can see I'm cutting his thighs again because I tried to pull that leg joint out and I couldn't get it to do anything. And this is the point where I said, okay, I'm just going to have to chop his legs off and make his thighs a little bit longer because he needs a lot more height to reach 6 foot 9 inches tall. And then I covered it with epoxy sculpt. This is the epoxy sculpt right here. And boom, see everything I did magically covered with epoxy sculpt and smoothed out. And I'm using water to smooth those edges so that you make sure your epoxy sculpt is as smooth as possible. And then I went back to working with Karen, and I decided I'm just gonna have to primer her body with white primer, which is paint, because the yellow was not working out. It was probably one of the, trust the process moments, but I didn't trust the process. And I just decided I trust white paint. And then I put it on Harry too. And then I went back to Murphy and I started using soft pastels on top of the dried primer. And I just used peach colors. And it worked a lot better, in my opinion, than trying to figure out that wheel. I just used a paintbrush and a sponge and applied the soft pastels directly on top. And then you seal it with Mr. Super Clear UV Matte spray. And then you keep adding and building the color as you need it. until she is the skin tone that you want. And then you can move on from there. The other nice thing about this is I was able to just paint her face as well with the primer and then use the soft pastels on her face. So that way I know that everything is the same color. There's no difference because it was all done at the same time with the same shades of soft pastels. So there's no variation whatsoever. Here we go. I'm painting her white face with the pan pastels. And she's starting to look more human. You can't even tell her body was ever purple, which is great. That's exactly what I was going for. I don't know, maybe the yellow underneath actually did help with this. I'm not sure. I just was not into waiting forever, many layers. So there she goes. And then I did the same thing with Harry. And I just went over his body with the same colors after the one coat of primer, because you can tell his skin is still a little bit orange, and went over him in the same shades. He needs to be very pale because he's described as pale. I guess that happens when you're a wizard and you spend all of your time in your underground lair working on your spells. There we go. We're doing his face. And then this is where it gets a little bit weird. I decided at this point that, yeah, I'm not happy with how he looks. I feel like the epoxy sculpt came out a little bit too rough. I sanded it, I did all the things, but I felt like I just had to start over. He needed too much. He just needed to be different from what he was. So I started over. I got another used Heath Burns doll, and I cut his calves, and I cut his stomach, and I cut his biceps and his forearms, just to kind of balance out where the length in the body was. And then I covered it all in epoxy sculpt again, the exact same way. And then I used the surface primer, there it is, and I covered him in that. I think I did 2 layers this time. And I just did a switch out with the old and with the new. I also did the body shading and everything. And here we are working on Murphy's hair. This is yarn hair that I just curled around a toothpick with a flat iron and just did my best to give her cute little ringlet curls because that's how she's described in the books. So the original theme for this collab was my idea. I wanted to do whimsical weddings. I wanted weddings that never happened, but you really wish they had. And for me, that's Dresden and Murphy, because I spent the whole series of books hoping those two would get together and wondering what that would be like and hoping, they would both finally be happy. And then, spoiler alert, it finally kind of happens, and then it unhappens in a freaking tragic way. I thought I was ready for this collab, and, I could just breeze through this and it'd be fine. I'm not sad about Karrin anymore. No, it's cool. No, I was very sad. This project took me about 2 months because I kept getting sad and having to stop. And there's also a lot of detail work in this. Right here, I'm making his shield bracelet because he is an actual wizard. So he does do actual magic, and one of his tools is a shield bracelet. So there was a lot of detail work in this. And, everything from his bracelet to his kinetic rings to his wizard staff to his blasting rod. And then Karrin Murphy has her silver earrings. And unfortunately, she's a weapons expert. So I can't say pew pew, and I can't make a pew pew on YouTube that I know of. I feel like I would probably end up regretting that if I did. So I made those off screen, and she has those because that's such a big part of who she is. But I'm not going to include them in the video. So this video is basically these 2 dolls what it would look like if Karrin and Harry had gotten married. And that was my whole, that was the whole theme. And I think my collab partners have really cool projects too, so you should definitely check those out. But here I am making Harry's kinetic rings which is such a cool idea. Wouldn't you love to have those? I mean, I'd get in a lot of trouble if I had those, but I think they look pretty cool. I couldn't find a very good description for them, so I did kind of improvise on that. And then here I am doing the face up on Harry. I like to start with the eyes because that kind of defines a face for me. And Harry has dark eyes, but I feel like they would also be kind of friendly because he seems like he is actually a very friendly guy. And I think it fits with his character to kind of have friendly eyes. So, I don't know. I think in the end he looks a little bit maybe too soft and sweet, but I did my best. So here I am drawing a waterline on his eyes. I'm using watercolor colored pencils for this. And then I'm working on the... Oh, taking forever. There we go. Working on the outline of the eyes. And then I think I lost some footage in here. It was kind of hard. This project took many, many, many hours, and I ended up having to condense this down into a watchable video. So a lot of things got cut and a lot of things got lost. So I'm doing my best on what I include. But here we are working on his face. And you seen with the first doll, like I popped his hair off, and then he had that weird kind of line hole in his head. So this time I'm trying to keep his hair and see if I can work with it and make it look more like Harry's hair, because otherwise it'd be a nightmare trying to redo what's there. Oh, and then here we're doing the original eyebrows. Originally I did them, I think, too thin. I do end up darkening them later on, but because it made him look too soft again, I think. And he, is a serious guy too. He's a wizard and he does serious stuff and saves the world a few times. So he needs some, man eyebrows, whatever that means. Here we are drawing the eyebrows on, trying to get those straight and even. And he has dark hair. It doesn't ever say his hair is black, so I'm assuming it's dark brown. And that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm trying to, make the eyebrows match that. And then he's looking pretty good. So go ahead and define the eyes. I'm not going to give him big eyelashes like you would on a lady, because I feel like that would kind of be out of character and make him look even softer. So I'm going to avoid that. Now I think drawing details here with watercolor colored pencils. Trying to give his eyes some dimension and depth. Just paying attention to all the little details that matter. And then changing my mind a few times. And then, nope, I'm happy now. So here we go with the shadows on his eyes. Trying to make him look a little tougher. And I don't know, I think it's kind of mixed results. But we're shadowing the eyes with soft pastels, because that's the easiest way I can think of to do it. And then drawing on eyelids. Yep, see, just going over it a couple times. And don't forget to spray as you go. Spray and let it dry. That kind of saves where you're at. And, so that you can make progress without having to completely start over every time. And I'm lightening up the eyes again. Just kind of looking for that, the right combination. And I'm drawing highlights on the nose and the mouth and the lips. His lips were kind of tough. Usually when I do a doll, it's always been a female. So, you just put lipstick on. It doesn't really matter what color. But trying to go for a more natural skin tone just for lips was more challenging. I ended up using soft pastels, and then I used watercolor colored pencils. And just did my best to kind of blend them and make them not too pink, but not pale. So I feel like I did a pretty decent job here. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Oh, his mother's amulet. It's a pentacle with a red stone in the middle that he uses quite a bit in the books. And that's actually really important. I feel like that's going to be a big part of what's coming up too in the next books. because it's a tiny thing that has been hugely used. So I feel like there's probably more to it in the details. But I had this charm. It was actually on a baseball hat that I never wore. But I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be perfect. So I just put a red stone on top of it, and then I put glow-in-the-dark paint on top of that, so it'll glow in the dark, like you would expect it to if you're a fan of the books. And then here I am, trying to tackle his hair. And they say his hair is brown, and it's kind of shaggy, and a lot of times, he doesn't have time to go in for a fancy haircut, nor does he have the money in most of the story. So I'm trying to go for, neatly overly long. Neatly shaggy, is that a thing? But I'm doing my best. I'm using epoxy sculpt. I'm kind of smoothing it down and building it as I go. And then later on, I'll draw in the details before it dries. But I got to get the whole thing covered because the sides are completely, they're skin. So, see right there? So I got to fill all of that in and try to make it look like hair and try to make it blend in with what's already there with the doll originally. So I went for a little bit longer in the back, and that's going to have to work for his hair being long and shaggy. And then here I am using a toothpick to kind of draw in the details of what his hair is. Just giving it more depth and details, like I said. You gotta pay attention to those. Smoothing it down. It's a back and forth. Trying to get him. I was trying to avoid a mullet look. Just want it to look like it's just kind of brushed back. Because this is also supposed to be his wedding day. So he would try to clean up a little. And I feel like that's a pretty common thing. If your hair is long and you're a guy and you're trying to clean up, you just brush it back and that's that. So that's what I'm trying to imitate here. But there is a lot of detailing to do whenever you're doing hair out of clay or epoxy sculpt. So I always think, oh, this will be quick and easy. And then it ends up taking all day. But, if the end results are good, then it's worth it. So I feel like he turned out pretty well in the hair department. And then it's time to move over to Karrin Murphy, doing her face up, using watercolor colored pencils. So I really love this character. I've loved this character for a long time. And I'm starting with just defining her eyes the same way I did with Harry. And the character of Karrin Murphy, she starts out as a colleague, kind of, and a friend to Harry Dresden. And then over time, over the development of the books, they become more. So Karrin Murphy, in the books, a lot of times she's called Murph. She was a detective with special investigations, and she's described as 5 feet tall with an athletic build. She has curly blonde ringlet hair and cornflower blue eyes. And together, Harry and Karrin are sweet and sarcastic. They are best friends before they become more as the books progress. And they do end up being in love. And I'm trying not to say anything more about that because I don't want to, have a video of spoilers. But, she's a detective, a warrior, martial arts expert, a weapons expert, although I cannot include her weapons in this video because I don't want to get in trouble for it. But Karrin Murphy is smart, she's brave, she's loyal, and she's just all around a great character that I really loved. She's also a Jotun slayer, and Jotun are the Norse giants, like ice giants from Norse mythology. And then Murphy also becomes an Einherjar, which is one of Odin's chosen, who feast in the halls of Valhalla until Ragnarok. So that means she died a warrior's death. speaking of no spoilers. I did include the Vulk knot on Murphy's dress, and it glows in the dark. You won't be able to see it because it's the 3 triangles that are connected together, which has kind of been taken over by certain groups. And again, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want anybody to be upset by it. So it's there, and I know it's there, but you won't see it, just in case, you know, that would be alarming for you. But she did earn her mark from Odin, so I put it there. And she's my doll, and I don't plan on selling her, so I included what I wanted to. But her face-up was a lot more easy for me because she's a girl doll, and I'm just used to doing girl dolls. So, you know, I did all the details. You know, I drew the eyes. I tried to keep her little, like, smirking smile. And then I'm giving her some kind of fancy eyeshadow because it's her wedding day. So you figure, even if she doesn't always go for the, you know, big-time girly look, she might do a little bit more on her wedding day. And I'm pretty happy with how she turned out. It was kind of challenging to get their proportions right with him being so tall and her being so small. But I feel like I kind of nailed it. So, and then here I am drawing some more eyeshadow on. Again, this is, you have to do layers and spray and layers and spray. But I like how she looks. I feel like she wouldn't overdo it, but she'd have a little something on. And then she's also wearing her earrings, which are hard to see, but that's okay. I know they're there. And I'm telling you, you'll have to believe me. So, you know, doing the details, doing the highlights, getting all of her makeup done. Yep, see, a little bit more. It's got to be right. And when I'm happy with it, I'll stop. So, make sure she's got blush. There we go. And she actually goes through quite a bit in the books, but she's always the same character, and I appreciate that about her. She doesn't give up. She stays tough. And, yep, there we go. Kind of a little smirky smile, which I feel like is how she would look as she's talking to Dresden. Because, you know, they're always back and forth. There we go. It's a really good series if you haven't read it. And I haven't completely ruined it for you with spoilers. I love the books. Here I am doing white highlights, which just kind of make her look a bit more real. It's a watercolor colored pencil I'm using. And then, yeah, see her eyebrows are so thin because she's a girl. Oh, there's Harry. Yeah, see their height difference? All right, and now Harry is a wizard, and he has a wizard's staff, which is made of wood, and it has runes carved into it. And it's a magical instrument. It's something that he uses. It's a tool. And so it's wooden, so I'm going to go ahead and paint this brown. It's just a wooden dowel, like a rod. So I scratched it up to try to make it look like wood grain. And initially I tried to carve the ruins into it, and that was a disaster. I didn't include that because I didn't have time. But eventually, yeah, I'm using more than one color of brown to give it depth. But yeah, I had to go back and kind of start over with a new rod. And I just drew with a very, very fine tip paintbrush and black paint. I drew a bunch of different ruins on it. And then I feel like it came out pretty good. The proportions just happened to work out because Harry's staff is supposed to be about 6 foot. I think it goes to like his temple or something, so it might be a little more than 6 foot. And then here I am working on his blasting rod, which is like the boy version, I think, of a magic wand. He uses it to focus his magic. And then, see, here we are. He's got his rings. He's got his bracelet. What am I doing? Oh, painting his hair. Yeah, see, I'm using multiple shades of brown because I got to find which one I like the most and make that the dominant color, and then go with highlights and lowlights. And I feel like this actually is the point where he starts to really say Harry to me, which I don't know why. Oh, his hair makes him say Harry. Haha. But I feel like his hair came out pretty good. It's better than I could have done with yarn or, with rerooting it. So I'm happy with how this looks. And then, yeah, see, I'm painting different colors. Just working with different shades of brown and getting the details just right. It was kind of hard to paint the back and not get paint all over his neck. But I did it. So I think this is the very last detail on him. And then I have to move on to clothing. And if you've watched any of my other videos before, you know that I hate making doll clothes. I know I've mentioned that. But I really do. I'm not a big fan of doll clothes. But Harry Dresden has a very specific look. He has a duster. Oh, he has multiple dusters. But, oh, yeah, see. Here I am painting, Here I am painting glow-in-the-dark paint over the tiny little ruins that I drew and paint on there. And that will make the wizard's staff glow in the dark, which is, yep, see? Or black light. Black light will work too. I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, other than his rod and his wizard's staff, he has a duster, which is a type of jacket. And it's got a mantle on it, which covers his shoulders. And I looked everywhere I could even imagine for doll clothes that fit that description even a little bit. And I found nothing. So that means I had to make it. I had a lot more fun doing the wizard's staff and the blasting rod. It took me 3 days to do his duster, and it was a nightmare. And I did 3 separate coats, and they just kept being wrong, until I ended up with the final one, the one that works, the one that is what I think it should be. Yeah, see, here's the blasting rod glowing. I just went with a bunch of different symbols. I went online and just looked up ruins and painted what I saw. So, here's hoping it doesn't actually say anything, which I'm sure it doesn't, but I'm pretty sure it's from lots of different cultures, different symbols from different cultures. And yeah, I just had to go through and paint every single one of those with the glow-in-the-dark paint. One is green and the other is blue. And a lot of times if he's doing some kind of spell, the author describes, his staff as glowing. So I was like, gotta have that. Yeah, see, blue and then green. Yep, I was happy with that. And then, yeah, here I am starting the clothes. And this is actually an old pair of jeans. And I just cut it off a leg to make him jeans, which is kind of funny. But it actually worked better than I thought. And I only had to do this one time. So I just made it up as I went along, basically. And I just used a needle and thread and denim and just kind of sewed it to his figure. Yeah, see, cutting 2 legs. I really did not expect this to work. And I thought I was going to have to go and look for doll jeans. Find somebody who has doll jeans. But I got lucky on this one. And Harry is, he's a jeans type of guy. So I had to have jeans for this. And here I am hand sewing it. And I cut through a lot of the boring stuff because you don't need to watch me sew for 20 minutes. And then, yeah, I just sewed it around him and put him on, and he had jeans. And I should have known. That was a little too easy. I should have known what was coming with the duster. Oh, and I didn't record making Murphy's dress because I was very frazzled at that point after having dealt with the duster. Oh, wait, what? Why is there a spare arm? What is going on? Why would a wizard need an interchangeable arm? Well, maybe if you're Harry Dresden, you really like the Fuego spell, and you use it a lot, and that makes a fireball. Oh, and I gotta put scars on his hand first. So I'm using UV resin and a UV light, and I'm going for a scarred effect on his hand, front and back, because of something that happened in the books. See, now I'm not trying to spoil. But yeah, front and back. And then I did go over this with a lighter color acrylic paint, like a light pink, because I wanted it to show up and look as though it had healed a bit. But yeah, he got his hand hurt. He was saving children. So I had to make sure to include that because that's very hairy. And then back to my random hand. Now this is obviously just hot glue. And I am trying to make a ball. And this was not as easy as I was hoping it would be. But it did work. And then I took it all off and I put an LED light in and redid it. But I did not record that. I was too busy burning myself and worrying about what was going on with the LED light and if it was going to continue to work. But it did. So, yeah. Hey, look, I got smart and I started using a tool. Okay, so yeah, just building up a ball of hot glue and trying to hold it upside down so that it would flow downward and make a ball. And then after it had cooled off, I paint it with, fire-colored acrylic paint to make it look like a fireball. That way I can pop his arm off at the elbow and put a fireball in his hand, which I think is pretty cool. And then for this part, if you're a fan of the books, I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. Like, this made me sad. If you understand the symbolism of the red spot on the neck. Like, I had to take a break after doing this. I made myself sad. But yeah, she would have jewelry on her wedding day, right? She's not one for jewelry most of the time, but, if you know, I guess. And if you do and it makes you sad, I apologize. I did not mean that thumbs up. Okay, so another thing about Harry is, he doesn't look so kind of pretty right here, but I was trying to rough him up a little bit, and he does have scars on his face, like his eyebrow, his lip, his jaw, just from various things that occur during his, many, many adventures. And then he also, he's never clean shaven. He doesn't have time for that. So I'm using many watercolor colored pencils here to try to draw stubble, just to kind of make him more authentic. This is who he is, I mean, yeah, it's his wedding day. He'd probably show up clean shaven, but who knows? He's Harry. He might have to go and save an orphanage of children or something. Who knows? And I just wanted him to have stubble, because it's not always going to be his wedding day, but he's always going to be Harry. So now on to the pictures. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. I did my best. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than anybody else has done because nobody's done it? Yes. So please check out my collab partners and their projects and let me know what you think. But don't be mean. Thank you for watching. Like and follow and subscribe and all that stuff too. I always forget that. Also, I realized I kind of did a little bit of a sad thing with the pictures where they're together and then she slowly leaves him. That was an accident. But, they're still really good books. Go check them out. Thank you. Bye.